Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and today's episode is based on the Paganini Étude No.1 by Franz Liszt. This etude, written in the key of G minor, is based on material from Paganini Caprice No. 5, in particular the intro and coda, and also Paganini Caprice No. 6, which is where we hear all those tremolos. To get started with this tutorial, before we go into depth on expression, interpretation, technical exercises to help you get better with this, and many other things, I'll just go ahead and play a few lines. Then the material from Paganini Caprice No. 6 with all the tremolos. Okay, we will get to a lot in this tutorial. A lot of it is how I've divided up the tremolo section to make it very comfortable in the hand. Additionally, I want to go over plenty of technical exercises to help you have the stamina to play those tremolos, and also just some basics with tremolos to help you get clarity and to help keep the hand loose and reduce tension. That's going to be a big part of this tutorial, is how to keep loose and how to reduce tension. Other material that we'll be going over includes how to be very expressive and ideas for shaping and voicing, and how to create variety throughout the piece. This is a really easy piece to start to sound technical with because it is so repetitive, and it doesn't have like the very memorable melodic lines as many of the other etudes do. Ironically, this is the last etude I'm recording tutorials on. We've covered 2 through 6 previous to this, but this was the last one I learned. I just learned it a few months ago and performed it for the first couple of times last month, so it's still a pretty new piece for me. But I really love it, and there's a lot that you can do with texture in this piece. Even though it doesn't have those extremely memorable melodic lines, there is a lot of beautiful melodic and harmonic material in here, but it's not something that I find myself, humming or whistling, as much as some of these other etudes. So we have to be extra. The reason I bring that up is we have to be extra vigilant as we go through this to make sure that we are really putting in maximum effort to make this very interesting, not only with shape, but also with how much we're voicing, how much accompaniment we're bringing in. How can we create variety when it just seems like a lot of these lines are rising and falling in a very similar fashion? How do we create variety? So we'll go over all of this. Okay, let's just start with that opening material. Let's go over some basics with scales and arpeggios, just a little brush up. I have many tutorials on YouTube about scales and arpeggios, but a few things that I like to think about. First of all is energy conservation. You can start out 2 different ways. I've heard it in recordings, people start out with accent, obviously, and you can use this whole support of your arm. I almost like to go down with the whole hand like that. I don't like to try to isolate and smack it with my pinky alone. Use the whole arm, okay? And then you can do no accent and kind of emerge out of that, like that. Or you can do something like that. Trifonov does that second one. When I took this to my teacher, we discussed, and we also felt that the other way may create just a bit more drive, because when it's undefined at the beginning, I do like that. It's really grippy and very resolute, but that almost is like the wind, a gust of wind that comes out of nowhere. It's not so defined at the beginning, so it's up to you. I would be quite large on these, then come down, and then just like the last 3 or 4, quite big. So that's a way of preserving some energy and also gaining a bit of speed. Okay, Okay, same thing here. And I always liked, that's just, I don't know if that's my thing or if I've heard it in a recording, I can't remember. A lot of people will rush to the top. Sorry. And just go right to it. I always, yeah-da-da-dum. I really like to reinforce that. Just personal opinion, okay? And a little bit of advice is, if you're having trouble with scales and tenths, be patient with yourself. I remember the first time I dealt with scales and tenths in a big piece was the Chopin First Ballade. I think I was, 13 or 14 when I learned that. It's been a while since I played that. Okay, and that took me a while because your hands always wanted to coordinate to that octave. So it's a good idea just to warm up. Even if you do it slowly, you can take these G minor scales in thirds. You could take them in sixths, or you could probably start this way. And then you could take it in octaves and then in tenths. That's a really good way to train your ears to hear those various intervals. Additionally, it's really good for the coordination of keeping the hands aligned no matter what the interval is between the hands. Okay, now getting into actual tips for arpeggios and scales, like I said I was going to get to. I want to talk about 3 points of rotation in the hand. So we can have like a doorknob turning rotation. We have this kind of side to side, like a window wiper, or a waving type of rotation. And then we have up and down movement. Yes, there's probably more points of rotation than that, but those are the ones that I personally like to think about, that I've thought about for many, many years. And a lot of students, what they'll do is they'll just do kind of that windshield wiper turning one, the waving one. But they don't actually do any of the doorknob turns, so they don't hinge that way. And you can also hinge up slightly. So you want all these points of rotation to work together in harmony. So as you do this, it feels kind of like you're just folding the hand over, but there's a lot that goes into that. There's this type of rotation, that waving rotation. There's a little bit of like a doorknob turn rotation, and then a little bit of raising to reach up into that black key area. You can also move the hand forward just slightly. You don't need to do a lot of that because the fourth finger is a lot longer than the thumb is, which precedes it. But okay, now with scales, I like to think of keeping a very active thumb, actually. So I like that thumb to be nice and prepared on that next note. So as I'm playing these other notes, that thumb is crossing under to get to those next positions. Additional ways of practicing, real basic ways, are high fingers. You can do high fingers 2 ways. I advocate the second way more. You can go straight up. That's just a nice exercise to get warmed up. But you can also do it curved and try not to hold tension between those. A little more curved as I do that. It's a little bit easier to do on scales. Okay, another way of practicing is finger staccato. These are tried and true methods. You can go real slow on those. When you do finger staccato, it is somewhat isolating the fingers, but still have involvement from the whole mechanism. You don't want to literally only do this, because then you'll get tightness at the wrist. You'll cut off that support. So very nice way to activate the fingers. Something that Sergei Babayan talked about all the time was active fingers. If you don't have active fingers, you're sunk. And a lot of these schools of thought that teach so much about rotation, it's very easy, if you're not careful, to forget about activity in the fingertips. So I've been talking a lot about rotation. I don't have anything against rotation, but you have to always have activity at the fingertip level combined with all of those bigger muscles that you're using to accommodate those fingers. Otherwise, you can get stuck this way, or you can get stuck in these bigger movements, and then the fingers get lazy, and then you can end up clumping as things get into higher speeds. It doesn't work as well in higher speeds unless you've coordinated all those efforts early on. Another few ways of practicing these are just some basic rhythms. I go back to these because they work. I know it's not sexy information, but and that I think is the best one. That's that, and then 5 rhythms are also good. So 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5, 1 2 3 4 5. Make sure that on those short notes, those short duration notes, that you're always in tempo, maybe even a bit beyond the tempo that you want to be in as you do those, and pause on that 5th note. And then you can also alternate where you start those. So if you start 1 2 3 4 5 from the F sharp, and you go through all these, I'd go through and redo that until it's clean, but just for time's sake, I'll go on to the next one. So you start from the E flat, and then you go from the D until you've started from 5 consecutive different notes. Then you've covered all your bases. You can do 5 7 9 rhythms. You can also just do like long, short, 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 long, groups of 4. I just love those rhythms. The other thing that I like to do is I like to use peer note method. I have a YouTube video on that. Basically doing groups of 9. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Sorry, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9, and then 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. 1 2 3 4 5. It's a 9 rhythm, in other words, but then you replay the note that you just ended on. So 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9. Then you'd lift, and then that's really helpful for working your scales up into more fluid, fast tempos. So the last thing with chromatic scales, my right hand's definitely faster than my left hand. So what I try to do is, again, a little method that can create an illusion is, don't start with, first of all, that's going to muddy up your pedal. Start big, and then, and yeah, I'm going pretty fast. There's people that can play it much faster than I can. Okay, and then big. Again, save some energy, because your hand can usually play faster when it's lighter. One of the most difficult things to do on the piano is to play fortissimo and fast for long periods of time. So you need to find little ways to save energy. Okay, the last thing is, make sure that feels nice and resolute. I've heard students, I haven't ever taught this piece, I've just played it myself, but places like this, they'll get through this whole grandiose page, and then they'll just play mezzo forte. Don't do that. So it's big, as if the piece ended, because then I can't remember exactly how the Paganini Caprice goes. I was listening to it before this. There's a bunch of other technical stuff. The Paganini Étude Caprice number 6 starts so mysteriously. So you really want that hard cut, and then, okay, let's talk about tremolos, and then